Now declare this meeting of the Iredell County Board of Commissioners to order. I'd like to ask Mr. Johnson, if he would, to do our invocation. And tonight, please remember the people in Haiti, the ones who are the survivors of the disaster. I'd be remiss if we didn't say something to alleviate the suffering that's going on in that part of the world. So, Mr. Johnson.
Let's pray, please. Heavenly Father, as we come to you tonight, we do ask that you would be with the people in Haiti. That, Lord, you would comfort their suffering, that you would send those you would have to go, and you would help the efficient arrival of medical services and food and clothing and housing. Father, we can't imagine that, and sometimes, honestly, we don't understand why such things happen. But Lord, we know that you're sovereign and you're in control, and that you love those people as you love us. And we pray you'll be with them. You'll protect those who are trying to help them. Father, once this disaster is dealt with, we pray you'll establish a righteous government there that will serve those people well, and that those people will be lifted up by it, and they'll praise you for it. And as we make these decisions tonight, Father, we pray in Iredell County we'll have a righteous government based upon your law. And we'll do it in a way that pleases you and encourages others. We ask it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Steve. Now join me as you stand and pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Mashburn, do you have any adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, there are a couple of adjustments we need to make. We need to add under memo number 11, which is item L. This would be 11B, a request for approval and signature on a one-year agreement to rent dishwashing equipment from Eco Lab Incorporated, and the Sheriff's Office and Purchasing Director will be making that presentation. And then memo number 11C would be a request to call for a public hearing on Tuesday, February the 15th at 7 p.m. regarding industrial revenue bonds for Providencia USA Incorporated. And then under a closed session, would like to add a personnel item, and this would be GS 143, GS 143 318 11A6. Those are the adjustments to the agenda that I have, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion that we accept the agenda with these additions?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made. We accept this agenda. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Under administrative matters, these items will normally be considered under consent. Mr. Mashburn.
Okay, first item is to approve the November and December 2009 tax refunds and releases. Mr. Doolittle is here if you have any questions of him, but he submitted them as being in order and with the county commissioners not having any involvement in either of them.
Any questions? A riveting presentation once again. Thank you.
All right.
Shorter than usual.
He's also here in case you have some questions on the ENR after a while as well.
Consent?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the next couple of items are presented by the library director. Mr. Steve Messick will do memo number 2 and 3.
Good evening. The first item is a request for approval by the board for the library to apply for E-rate discounts for telecommunication services. This is a program under the FCC. There is a fee added to telephone bills, and the fees collected go to provide discounted telecommunication services for schools and libraries. And the Idaho County Library has been participating in this program since 2001. The memo that you were presented summarizes the cost and the discounts that we would receive under this program. This would cover both our regular telephone service and internet access for the libraries. The total cost of these services is $40,482. We would receive $27,734 in E-rate discounts, so the final cost to the county would be $12,750. All of these are under existing contracts or month-to-month service agreements, except for the internet access and the data line to Troutman. Those are new 3-year contracts with AT&T. And I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone might have.
Any questions?
The second item is the request approval to apply for an LSTA Easy Basic Equipment Grant. This is a federal program administered through the State Library of North Carolina. We would be applying for funds to purchase 20 new computers for the main library in Statesville. These would go into our youth services area. Of the 20 computers that we had in that area when we opened the building in 2005, only 8 are currently operating. So this would replace the computers that are no longer in operation and also buy new ones. There is a matching grant required of this, or matching funds of $2,600. We would include this in our FY 2010-11 budget request, and the total amount we would seek in grant funding would be $10,300. And these funds, if we're approved with the grant, would be available to us after July the 1st.
Any questions?
You said the $2,600 in local funding for grant match. The $2,600 comes from where again?
We'll be requesting that in our FY 2010-2011 budget request.
Okay, I'm with you.
Anyone else?
Consent to
Two
both.
items be consent?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. We're here tonight to ask for a new position for the Sheriff's Office in our Special Victims Unit. I have Lieutenant Hamby here accompanied tonight to answer some any specific questions you may have, the reason why we want to create this position. The Sheriff is wanting to, we're getting a large, heavy workload, and due to the sex crimes and so forth, the sex offenders we're having to monitor, and the state mandates that's coming down that we're having to do in this unit. We have agreed, the Sheriff has agreed to fund this position for 2 years out of federal equity money, so we can get this position up and going with your approval tonight. I do have Lieutenant Hamby here if some of you already have a summary of what we're trying to do, and if you have any questions, I'll turn it over to him if you have any special questions you would like to ask of him.
Okay. Any questions?
I don't have a question about this position per se, but we've added several positions which y'all have been able to pay for without it coming out of the county budget so far. But I know that you can't do that forever. Just at some point, probably whenever we talk budgets, if we can look, if there's any way to get a summary of how many of these positions that y'all are able to fund temporarily, you know, what sort of schedule it looks like when it's going to be coming back onto our payroll. That would be good to have. I'm just kind of giving you a warning for a question to be coming down the pike later.
Okay, you asked it for these positions that we're funding specifically, if we're going to extend that, is that what you're asking?
No, I know you can't extend it, correct? I thought you could only pay for them out of seized funds and stuff like that for a limited time. After that, they came back onto the county's
Right,
payroll.
that's what I'm asking. You're asking for others, is that correct?
All of them.
Okay.
Because, I mean, for the past couple of years, I mean, y'all have done this on several occasions. I'm just kind of curious as to what that's going to look like a year out, 2 years out, as far as how many additional positions are going to be coming back onto our payroll.
Okay, that's fine.
I understand, Mr. Dowdle, these are right now temporary under the seized funds, and we do plan to add these at some point in time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Robertson said. At some point, I think we need to see a chart as to actually when these positions are going to be begin to absorb into the county budget and know what that price tag is.
We kind of have a reverse one for like school bonds. We know what we're paying, and when we don't have to pay them anymore, this would be a kind of reverse of that. As right now we're not paying for these, but eventually we will. What is that going to look like? So.
Okay.
Just to help us manage our numbers, that's all.
Okay.
You know, I say this because we're headed toward a lean budget year, but unless this economy turns around, and I don't think it is anytime soon, whoever's sitting here a year from now is going to have a harder job than we got. It's going to be bad.
Anyone else? I'd like to entertain a motion on this request.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Rick, go ahead. You got the next one, too.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. In early December, this board did approve a budget amendment to recognize Department of Justice Recovery Act grant funds to hire 4 ICE deputies for the Sheriff's Office. That grant did include $92,000 to fund 4 vehicles for those deputies. The Sheriff's Office determined that rather than cruisers, Chevrolet Tahoe 4-wheel drives would be more appropriate for these because they will be working on the highway in all weather conditions, both on and off-road at times, and the 4-wheel drives were felt to be better suited. They requested and received approval from the granting authority to be able to purchase those vehicles using the grant funds already allocated. We went out for formal solicitations, advertised, and received bids under the provisions that the bidding companies would provide prices for both new 2009, if available, and 2010 vehicles for the upcoming model years. We publicly opened all the bids. We received 4 bids for the 2010 vehicles and 1 for the 2009 vehicles. The low bid for all vehicles was Bobby Murray Chevrolet for $114,636. However, the only bidder for 2009 vehicles, which are already in stock, was offered by Randy Marion out of Mooresville. They offered 4 new 2009 Tahoes at a bid price of $119,600 and a 2-day delivery. 2010 vehicles have a minimum of 60, maximum of a 90-day delivery period. Even though the 2010 vehicles are somewhat lower, buying those vehicles will place these deputies on the road no earlier than April 15th. If we're allowed to buy these vehicles, the 2009 vehicles, from Randy Marion, we can have those vehicles around the February 15th mark. Sheriff's Office request is actually a contingent request. Along with this, with the granting agency, we had to request a sole source approval for these vehicles. That sole source approval has not come in yet, but it is pending. So we're requesting, contingent upon that sole source, that this board move to award the 2009 vehicles at $119,600 And if we do not get that approval for that sole source, the board also award the 2010 vehicles to the low bidder, provided we don't get it. Our preference is to get those 2009s. We can get the deputies on the road as quick as possible. The Sheriff's Office will request eventually a budget transfer to make up the difference between the $92,000 and the purchase price and tax and title fees for these vehicles.
Question? Comments?
Mr. Dowdle, one question. What we're saying is we'll have the people but no vehicle to put them in. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
We're willing to move these monies to make up the difference for the money so we can get these vehicles in here, so we can get the officers on the road.
Okay.
But let me understand. You said we can save $5,000 if we wait 60 days. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, but we're not guaranteed that.
I guaranteed that.
The up to 90 days, and some of these is taken up to 120 days if due to the backlog of the Tahoes for these dealers. Dean can elaborate more on that, but we're not sure about.
Do we have to start spending the personnel money immediately? I mean, is it spent regardless of whether we have vehicles or not? Or can we put that off until when we got vehicles?
I think the drawdowns at one time, is that correct, Mr. Master?
I can't answer that question without looking at that, but I was under the impression that you've already got the personnel.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's already, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, the personnel's already, we've already got them.
And they got nothing to do while we wait on vehicles?
Vehicles, that's what we're waiting, put them in vehicles.
Consent?
Consent.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I believe the next 5 items were from the Health Department.
Gentlemen, I also have the next agenda item. On December the 8th, Health Department was approved by this board to pursue the installation of a new electronic medical records management system. Health Department is in the process of acquiring that system and putting it into place. The full implementation of that system does require very fast transfer of data between the Health Department location in Mooresville and Statesville and also state and federal sites. The current T1 connection that we have provides a transfer rate that is way too slow to be able to move some of the records fast enough to be able to meet their needs. To provide the additional bandwidth, Health Department and our IT department have agreed they need to upgrade from the current T1 connection to a Metro E line connection between Mooresville and Statesville. This change, this update, will increase data transfer speeds, but it'll also save the county some money. Since Mooresville's in the Windstream area, we do have to sign a contract with that company for this Metro E connection. And after looking at the plans, the Health Department did decide that a 3-year contract will provide the best overall savings and cost over the 3-year life of the contract. The contract will save approximately $2,142 over the life of the contract. We're requesting approval and signature on a 3-year contract with Windstream for this connection, approval to upgrade, and the board should have that contract in front of them.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. Ms. Kimball, can you remind me, did the Board of Health weigh in on this or not?
This is the Board of Health doesn't have to approve the 3-year contract, the commissioners do, but this was the approved for the electronic medical records were approved, and this was part of that process. What we're doing now is just getting approval for the 3-year contract.
That's correct.
We wanted to save, we can go with the 1-year contract, but we won't save the $2,140. So we felt like that was a better purchase for the county.
So this was all part of the plan that you presented to the Board of Health then?
Right, but we have to get the 3-year contracts approved by you all.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Consent?
Consent.
The next item we have is a request for approval to add a WIC Nutritionist 1 position. Recently, the WIC program has had a policy change, and they've also had changes to the food package. And in addition, we've had an increase in caseloads. And this has increased our time needed by nutritionists to be with the clients. And so we're requesting that we add a Nutritionist 1 position to this fiscal year and ongoing, and this would be 100% covered by WIC nutrition funds. Any questions?
Question?
We think that they'll continue, that's a position that won't come back on the county's dime.
No. And if we weren't funded, then I would, the board would probably recommend that we not have that position.
Okay, thank you.
Consent?
Consent.
The next item we have is a request for approval of a budget amendment to accept a $3,000 March of Dimes prenatal substance abuse grant. We want to purchase educational materials to use with pregnant women to teach them about the need to avoid substance abuse. We also want to do a local training of professionals about prenatal or perinatal substance abuse. So we're requesting approval of a budget amendment to spend $3,000 in grant funds from the North Carolina March of Dimes.
Consent.
Consent?
Our next item is request for approval of a budget amendment to reallocate emergency preparedness funds for H1N1 pandemic flu implementation grant. We are asking that due to the new FEMA reporting requirements, we would need to move our implementation grant dollars from the general budget to a specific budget that would be coded for H1N1 pandemic flu implementation grant uses.
Any questions? Consent?
Consent.
And our last request is approval of a budget amendment to reallocate $11,930 within the pandemic planning grant budget. And this would better reflect the needs of the budget and the spending. So we're asking that we be able to move those funds around within that grant. And as you all remember, we had planning grant funds and implementation grant funds. So we just want to move that around within that particular grant.
Consent?
Consent.
World sure did change since our committee first met 5 years ago about this.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us down to memo number 11, and as you know, we have several items under memo number 11, and I'd just like to offer a little bit of word of explanation on some of this, why it's this way, and that the departments are required to submit their budget or their request to be on the agenda by the Wednesday prior to the county commissioners meeting, and then we try to get all budget items in the Friday prior to that. Many times it's just not possible because a lot of times we don't know until those dates or after those dates that an item has to be considered. Then that's when we kind of put a lot of pressure on Ms. Moore here to try to condense it all into the budget and get it into the agenda and get it before you. So we actually have 3 items under memo number 11. The first one is a request from Solid Waste Department for approval of a consultant services contract. The second one has to do with conveying land to Lifespan. And then, of course, the 2 that we added, just to not 11B and 11C. So, solid waste, are we ready to go with that one?
Good evening. The Solid Waste Department has requested the EPA and the Obama administration has mandated that all landfills start collecting weekly emissions for the greenhouse gas. This monitoring began January of 2010, and the final report isn't submitted till March of 2011. So it ends up being a multi-year contract that needs to be approved. Now, Joyce Engineering has submitted a proposed contract to us. The initial portion of the contract is a fee of $1,000, and for that $1,000, they're going to develop the plan. They're going to help us with the monitoring, collecting data, and then the additional fee of $1,500 at the latter end, March of 2011, will be the submission of the report to the EPA. So we are requesting an approval of this contract in the amount of $2,500 to come out of the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund for this contract. If you have any questions.
This money will come out of the enterprise fund?
Yes, sir. Now, I'm not sure, and they won't know until the data is received in March of 2011, whether it will be an annual reporting or not. I think they're just trying to see how much, they're trying to gauge the emission gases overall to see what they are.
Question? Consent?
Consent.
Thank you.
Okay, Tracy Jackson will present item 11.
Good evening. Joining me tonight, we have Ralph Adams, CFO, and Lee Darby, the CEO of Lifespan. These gentlemen are here to represent their organization in a request to the Board of Commissioners to convey by private sale the county-owned land and facilities located at 143 Iredell Avenue, previously known as the Iredell Vocational Workshop, to Lifespan Incorporated, with the stipulation that said land and facilities continue to be used for public purpose and not be conveyed for a for-profit entity. County shall have first right of refusal to purchase property if Lifespan Incorporated seeks to sell the property in the future. That's a long way of saying that Lifespan is interested in the facilities and the property on which their services are currently contained and where they're providing different types of services to developmentally disabled folks there. And I have a map. It's kind of crude. Our projector's not working tonight, so if I can bring that up, it'll probably help to explain a little bit better about the parcel description and some of the other specifics.
And while he's doing that, let me just remind the board that at one time, this land was conveyed to another authority, which was Vocational Workshop, a nonprofit group that a few years ago disbanded, and when they did, the property was turned back over to the county, but for, I don't know for how many years, and possibly someone could provide that information, but for years it was under the control of another body, and it was only when we got it back and then we started working with Lifespan, and so we're basically back requesting that the board consider doing the same thing that the board did several years ago.
So what you're saying, Mr. Mashman, is and something happened when it comes to, they decide they don't need the property anymore, it'll come back to the county?
That's correct. And it has to come back to the county. It has to continue to be used for a public purpose.
Non-profit.
Yes.
The map that you have before you, in the center of that map, there should be a circle. That is the property where the facilities are located right now. The parcel is actually bigger. I think for those of you that are familiar, you know that my sister's house is also located on that parcel. The total parcel is 28 acres. Just to the right of that circle is a straight dark line. There actually is a creek that runs through that property, almost divides it in half. So what Lifespan is really looking at is approximately 14 acres and not the entire 28 acres. So I just wanted to make that clear.
to make sure I understand, at some point, the Iredell Vocational Workshop shop owned this property, and then when they ceased to exist, they gave it to the county?
That's my understanding. It
Yeah.
reverted.
Well,
reverted
actually,
back
the
to
county owned it. It's part of the old county home property.
Right.
And so the county owned it at one time, and Mr. Pope, you chime in if you know more of the details than I do, but then at some point in time, it was turned over for the purposes of a vocational workshop, was turned over to that authority or that organization. And then when they disbanded, the property came back, and we entered into an agreement with Lifespan to continue to operate it as a vocational workshop. And you may, after Mr. Pope makes his comments, you may want to address what the current, how we currently work with Lifespan in utilizing that property.
I don't have any comments. It's my understanding that they want us to deed the property to them, and they're willing to deed it back to us, or agree to deed restrictions that would require that it be used for a public purpose. In case they don't, they go out of business or quit doing what they're doing. And I guess what we'd want to do is just verify the language, if you're inclined to do that.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. We're going to convey the property to them. My understanding is no money is going to change hands. We're going to deed the property to them. If they cease to do their activity for a public purpose, are they going to convey it back to us at no expense?
That's my understanding.
Yes, that would be our understanding too. And the difference would be is that right now, because we are the owners of the property, there's certain maintenance items that they're responsible for, but most of the, like roofs, driveways, things of that nature, it's the responsibility of the county. But of course, if we deed it to them, then it becomes their responsibility.
Yeah, I've been down there and looked at it. I mean,
We've made a number
everybody
of
knows
improvements.
it needs some work.
Right. The county has invested a certain amount of money into that facility just to bring it up to a certain standard. But Lifespan has also, and they're in the process of expanding some of their programs, and they have, a pretty broad vision of what they'd like to do, and they feel like this would help them in their endeavors.
Well, just so there's no misunderstanding down the road, let's just say that they decide that they need to add on to a building at some point 5 years from now, and then 10 years from now, they decide that they're going to cease operation. Will they convey us back to the property of that building, or will they expect to be repaid for whatever capital improvements they've made on the property?
Well, I could let them answer that. I would say, as it is now, at least in our lease agreement, any improvements they make would stay with the property. I mean, if you didn't decide on this tonight and it stayed just like it is now, any improvements they make would stay with the property. Okay. I think that probably should be part of the agreement.
Okay.
Do you all have any comments? Do you want to comment on that? If you do, come on up to the podium, please.
Entertaining this motion. We do support people with developmental disabilities and have for quite some time, in about 15 years here in the county. Our need is to control and have ownership of the building. We need to desperately make improvements in the building. We need to expand the facilities. To do that, we've got three. We need money. One of the sources is you, of course, and we've been very grateful for the routine maintenance, but the buildings themselves are very old. They leak. The driveway's crumbling. We need to make improvements. Second source are grants, primarily foundation grants and some corporation grants. The feedback we're getting from the grantors is they simply aren't going to put money into a county building. So if you owned it, they said, we will help fund it. Third is to borrow money. Like any other operation, sometimes you have to borrow money. And again, we can't very well borrow money for a public building. So that is our primary reason for wanting to have ownership of the building. We plan to be in this Iredell County for quite some time. We've got a fabulous relationship with Crossroads Behavioral Health Care and expect that to continue forever. We're certainly agreeable if we go out of business, which is unlikely, or decide not to be in Iredell County, which is equally unlikely, to convey the property back. The details of that have to be worked out. Of course, if we put a lot of money into the building, improvements, we would want to see some compensation for that. But I think we'd have to work out the details of that. Questions? Is there anything I can answer?
Yes, sir. What's the timeline on this? If we didn't act today, if we acted 2 weeks from now?
That's fine.
That'd be okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Plus, we're not really, what we're doing is asking for your permission to go forward with this. We would have to get with the attorney to draft up legal documents, and they would have to be approved by your legal folks as well, and then it would be something that would be brought back to the county commissioners for final approval. But we didn't want to start down this road of doing this if the board wasn't in agreement with the concept and the idea of doing it.
Now, I understand, if you folks spend a lot of money down there, I don't expect you to give it back to the county, but I think there needs to be some understanding as to the facility that exists now. Mm-hmm. And that we don't buy that back at some point, and that any compensation you'd be given in the future would be for any capital improvements that you've made on the property. And I'm sure some of those buildings are going to appreciate in value. There'll be some capital improvements you'll make, such as paving the driveway, that would depreciate in value over time. And all that can be negotiated out. I don't have any problem with the idea, but I don't want to get in the position where we're going to buy back a piece of property that we gave to you.
Mr. Chairman, I concur, and I think maybe we ought to take a little time to talk about how this language is going to work out before we send the lawyers to draft them.
Will we not, if we agree on it tonight, will we not have another opportunity to look at the agreement? Then we can, after it's on paper, and then determine if this meets our specifications or not?
Well, that was our intent, Mr. Chairman. That
if we're going forward with it, then we'll look at it after we get the draft, Bill's draft. Any input we want to put into it, we've got plenty of time before we meet again on it.
Yes, sir, that's fine with me if it's okay with the staff. I'm just afraid we'll mark it up more than they care for us to mark it up. But it's up to you.
Well, I think that's fine.
Okay.
I think you got a general understanding of my intent, what I expressed, and I think that'll be a point of negotiation. And understand, real estate prices may accelerate faster in the future, and as long as we would have first refusal, then we could negotiate that at the time of sale. And if we couldn't arrive at a mutually agreed upon price, you fellas could go sell it to somebody else. That's understandable. I don't have a problem. I want to avoid for paying something. Somebody's sitting here 20 years from now and paying for something that we gave away. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Right, and there's still the stipulation that it has to be used for public purpose in the future. Yeah. So.
And that was a discussion that we had with Tracy as we went through this. We knew that conveying the property to us that has a current value, and how do you protect that going forward? Of course, through the process, we learned that there is a state statute that to have this private conveyance, it has to stay for the use of public use. Our original concept was that if it went for any other use, we'd have to work out some kind of sharing concept in terms of what would be the price you would sell it in the open market if we had some investments. But we chose to go this process here that had to stay as a for nonprofit use. So.
Okay.
Since there are some questions, I think I'd like to have someone entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we'll go ahead and allow the staff to negotiate with these gentlemen with the understanding of the concerns that we've expressed.
Okay. Any other? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, item 11B is a request for approval of signature on a one-year agreement to rent dishwashing equipment. But this goes over 2 budget years. Basically, what we've done in the past is if it's 1 year or it's within a budget year and it's 1 year or less, then we've gone ahead and authorized the expenditure of that for that contract. But if it goes over, if it's more than a year or it goes across into another budget year, then we bring that back to the board. Even though this is a small, relatively small amount of money, it does commit into another budget year. Mr. Dean.
Yes, gentlemen, basically this is a request for a signature on a contract to rent a dishwashing unit. We have been renting a dishwashing unit from Ecolab for a number of years. However, that machine is starting to fall apart. It's very old. We've been doing it on an as needed, or should I say a monthly basis for quite some time. This is a brand new machine. Right now, the jail is having to expend a lot of money and a lot of effort using styrofoam to feed the inmates. They prepare about 1,000 meals a day. That's an extreme amount of styrofoam. Right now, they estimate by February 1 they'll have spent more than $3,000 to buy styrofoam. This particular agreement will rent to the jail at a low cost, $119.95 per month, a rather expensive dishwashing machine. In with that is an agreement that a certain dollar value of the chemicals sold by this company will also be purchased. Those chemicals are bought by the company Aeromark that actually prepares the meals and uses the kitchen. If we were to buy this machine, we would pay substantially more than the $12,000 I've listed in the memo. That $12,000 is actually a bottom line machine. The machine that we're replacing is not bottom line. It's actually very good equipment. So we're really getting it for a pretty good rate. As Mr. Mashburn said, this is a one-year agreement, but it does have automatic extensions, which means if it extends, it goes beyond the 1 year, which takes it into the area where you have to approve that. So we're bringing that to you with a request for approval and signature for that lease.
Consent? Excuse me.
Is there any maintenance agreement associated with this, Mr. Lale, where if it breaks down, they're going to fix it, or is that our responsibility?
No, sir. All maintenance is included in the lease. We don't have to do anything except make sure that that dollar value of chemicals are bought.
Okay, and what, maybe Mr. Dowdle can answer this better. What's the life expectancy of one of these machines, Mr. Dowdle?
We've had that. We've had the existing machine in there, I'm thinking 3 to 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. It just depends on how much we put through it, and we're putting a lot through it right now.
So you've had it about 4 years and you've worn it out?
Pretty much.
Well, you can lease it
Seals
for that.
on
You
it.
better go ahead and do it.
It's sort of an encased, pressurized system, and the seals don't last too long on these machines.
If you can lease it for that, you better lease it for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Consent? Okay. Next item.
And the last item is to call for a public hearing on Tuesday, February the 15th, regarding revenue bonds for Providencia USA.
Okay. Any questions? Consent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do I hear consent that the approval of the minutes for January 5th?
Consent.
Okay. The above items are on consent. Is there a motion we approve items A through C, E through K, LB through M?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Announcements of vacancies occurring on boards and commissions. We've got Nursing Home Advisory Committee, one announcement. Appointments to boards and commissions. We have an appointment for Criminal Justice Partnership Program Committee. Is there a motion? Is there a nomination?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Ms. Rhonda Touche.
Ms. Rhonda Touche has been nominated. Are the other nominations? Hearing none, I move that the nominations be closed and we accept Mr. Shea by acclamation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The next Board of Equalization and Review, 6 appointments. Are there nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate a slate of Gwen Fenninger, Larry Gallagher, Marcia Fruhan, Mike Brotherton, Daniel Allen Jr., and Sam Hall.
Okay. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I move that the nominations be closed and we accept this slate of candidates by acclamation. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Now it's our duty, I think, at this time to elect the chairman. Is there a nomination for chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mr. Larry Gallagher as chairman.
Okay. Larry Gallagher has been nominated as chairman. Are the other nominations? Hearing none, I move the nominations be closed and we accept Larry Gallagher by acclamation. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Larry Gallagher is chairman. Are the other?
Need to nominate a vice chairman, though.
Yeah, vice chairman. And do we do the alternate? Do we
Usually-
nominate the alternate?
We did the alternate.
Yeah.
Mr. Hall is an
Mr. Hall's the alternate.
Is the alternate, okay. Now, is there a nomination for vice chairman?
Daniel Allen?
Well, usually the way we do it, we make the chairman from one part of the county and the vice chairman from another, so every other cycle that the chairman goes off, you got somebody else.
Right.
Problem this time,
Got a couple
Mr.
of
Brother,
rookies.
well, Mr. Brotherton's a pretty smart fellow. He could probably catch on pretty fast.
Yeah.
I would nominate him, Mr. Mike Brotherton.
Mike Brotherton's been nominated as vice chairman. Are the other nominations? Hearing none, I move the nominations be closed and we accept Mr. Mike Brotherton by acclamation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Now I've lost my agenda.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business, he says. Here it is. Here we are. Unfinished business. Public comment period. We got anyone signed up tonight?
We had one, but they took their name off unless there was someone else.
Okay.
I spoke with him, Mr. Mashburn. They changed their mind, decided not to speak.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anyone else in the,
Anyone else like to speak? Whether you signed up or not, this is your time. New business?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there was a zoning case that we heard several months ago involving the Jones family. And I have talked to Ron Smith from the planning department. I had opposed the motion at the time, and there's some things that are different about that case, and I would like for it to be brought back before the board, if that's possible. If Mr. Smith can bring it back either the next meeting in January, or if they could bring it, if you could bring it back in the next meeting, that would be good.
Okay, are you
Me in February?
Yeah, in February, I'm sorry.
making that into a motion?
Yeah, if you need, if it needs to be as a motion.
Well, actually, you probably also need to suspend your rules, because this is an item that you've already taken into consideration. And for you to be able to consider it again, then that normally would have to be done at the same meeting that, where you'd already taken action on it. So these are your rules of procedure. But if you want to take it back up, then you need to, you would need to suspend your rules and then take this item back up.
Okay, you include that in your motion. I'll make a motion we suspend the rules.
All right, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and then request that the planning director bring that item back before the board at the soonest time, that at the next meeting where he could be prepared.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
We've already had a public hearing on this. It won't be necessary to have another public hearing?
I don't know that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may I have just a parliamentary inquiry. Can we be certain that, I thought there was a time period, and I don't have my rules of procedure in front of me. I thought he could make a motion to reconsider within a certain time period, as long as he was on the prevailing side.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Either way, can you answer the question, do we have to have another public hearing?
Well, wait, I think that's relevant. I think the answer to this question makes a difference in how he can answer his question.
Well, it says to revive consideration. Well, maybe it's changed. Will you look at, we'll answer his question while I look at this, okay?
Might have to reference your answer.
Yeah, okay, it says to reconsider, the motion must be made by a member who voted with the prevailing side. The motion must be made at the same meeting at which the original vote was taken. That's what I was going by.
Okay. So otherwise,
And it was a 2-2 vote, so I don't know who was the prevailing one anyway.
it wasn't prevailing side. That's the whole thing. Prevailing side was.
Well, the motion failed, obviously.
Yeah, Galen, I still thinks we were.
Under what I remember from the last meeting was that there was the ability for one of the commissioners to bring this up within 6 months. I know that was said at some point during that meeting. And if that's the case, or if that were the case, it's my understanding that this would just be a revote on the same issue under the same, under the information gathered through the public hearing. But if that's not the case, then there are limitations on bringing it back up, and we're limited to a year's time, and that's for a different zoning district.
Mr. Chairman, I have further inquiry. I believe if we, and I haven't seen the rules, but even so, if we made the motion to suspend the rules and reconsider the vote, and the motion to suspend the rules passed, then we could reconsider the vote and be fine.
Yeah. You concur?
I do concur.
Okay. Basically, that's your motion then, right?
Sure.
The motion is to suspend the rules.
Motion is to suspend the rules and to bring the case back up at the next meeting, where the planning director could be prepared to present it again.
We're still within a year.
Pardon me?
We're still within 1 year.
It is, and I think that's okay, because this is a reconsideration of the vote and not a rehearing of the request. So I would be comfortable from our end of it.
Mr. Smith, usually your answers are succinct and coherent, but I'm still not sure I understood. We do not have to have another public hearing?
It's my opinion that you don't have to have another public hearing. If you're reconsidering your vote, then you won't have to have the public hearing.
All right. Now, one more question. Mr. Robertson, is it your intent when we come back to that meeting for Mr. Smith to revisit all the proceedings prior to tonight, and he's going to come back with a recommendation? Is that
correct?
Okay.
I would almost feel more comfortable leaving it as is, giving you the information. If we get into too much deliberation of new information, that might move us. I don't know, Mr. Pope, if you want to chime in on that. Yeah. That might move us away from just the reconsideration.
If Mr. Robertson well, you cannot withdraw, can you? Well, I can. If you withdraw your motion, I want to try something.
Well, I'm not sure we can, though.
Just talk. What do you want to do?
Well, I think we can make a motion to suspend the rules and have a vote on the motion to reconsider. And then the motion to reconsider comes up immediately right now. If we don't want to talk about it till next time, then there's a motion to table, and that takes it until we decide to pick it up again. But then the vote is there.
We're not going to vote on it.
The vote is there.
I'm not going to vote on it.
Well, it's just a motion to table. That's fine. But at least the motion is there, and it's legal, and it's and we, you know, it has to be taken from the table whenever somebody makes that motion. But I think if we don't do that, and I agree, if there gets to be debate, then we get into murky water.
Your motion could be to table to a time certain.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
The motion could be to table until a time certain. If the reconsideration motion.
We'll hear it when he comes back. I don't understand the difference.
Well, we're deciding to vote rather than deciding to listen to a presentation, I guess is the difference.
To amend our rules.
To suspend the rules,
Suspend
to
the rules,
reconsider the
to
motion.
reconsider the motion, period.
Okay, all right. Yeah, my motion is to suspend the rules and to reconsider the motion.
Heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Then do I need to make a separate motion to table it until next month?
Yes.
Make a motion to table the vote until next month, until the next meeting when Mr. Smith can bring back the information.
Heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay. Thank you. Anything else on new business? County Manager's Report.
Mr. Chairman, the first thing I have is just to remind you that you have an invitation from the Mooresville Town Board for a joint meeting for Thursday, January the 21st. If you decide that you want to meet jointly with them, then your action tonight would just be to adjourn this meeting until 6 o'clock on Thursday, January the 21st at the Charles Mack Citizen Center in Mooresville. Now, if a quorum is not going to be able to attend that joint meeting, then you don't need to do that anyway. But if you anticipate that a quorum will be present, then you need to do that.
Mr. Manager, can I ask what that's in reference to?
Mr. Norman, and it may not be clear there in front of you, but it's probably being covered up. But first of all, there's going to be a dinner, and then they're going to talk about the vision for Iredell County, land use and planning, transportation and transit, economic development and recreation. And these are matters that the town board is requesting that the commissioners discuss with them. The town of Morrisville set the agenda. This has not been a collaboration.
Do you know any other groups that are going to be asked to join?
As far as I know, it's just between the town board, town commissioners, and the county commissioners.
Guess I might ask again is who all intends to be there that night.
I plan to attend. If I'm not there at 6 o'clock, tell them I'm on my way, but plan to attend.
I plan to attend. Mr. Chairman, I do plan to attend. I will attend regardless. I do kind of question whether we ought to be voting at that meeting or subject to any votes or decision-making.
Well,
when we're not under your...
that's the reason if we have a quorum, we're going to continue this meeting on until that time. So we're not going to adjourn tonight. We'll just continue on.
Yes, sir, I understand. I just question whether this board should be under the order of another board. I feel like if you're there, you should be the chairman of this board, and I'm just not sure how they're going to work that out. But as long as it's worked out with you fine, then I'm fine with it. I just personally want to.
I don't think you have time to do your homework, unless we go out of time to look at what's there. We don't know what they're asking.
Well, I don't see.
I agree.
Many items on this list here that we're going to be able to make a snap decision on anyway.
There's one on there. I can give you one on right now.
Well, I said we're going to make a snap decision.
Paying for a train. Said that voting to pay for the train.
I don't believe that's a snap decision. I think that's been I mean, we've gone down that road before.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm just saying, if it's possible and if it's the will of this board, I would like for us not to be under their jurisdiction under any circumstances or under their order, other than as, I guess, observers or, certainly we can listen and talk to them. I feel like this is our board and that's their board and that's the way that ought to be. If they want to invite us to listen to their board, I'm glad to do it.
We can make it a rule or order that we're not making any motions.
Well,
come and listen, but we don't have to vote on anything.
I don't know if that's necessary. I spend a lot of time with you fellas, and I've never seen anybody push you around too much.
Okay.
You're a pretty stubborn bunch, if you want my
Usually,
opinion.
in these joint meetings, about the most you ever do is ask the staff to look at something.
Yeah. But anyway, there's Marvin. You plan on going?
As I know right now. As long as it's discussion only, I plan to not vote on anything.
Yeah, can you? Okay. I'll tend to be there.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question then.
Sir?
If Mr. Norman, I don't, we don't believe we should have to vote on anything. If we're there and it's a meeting, then we're compelled to vote under state law. And if we don't vote.
Not unless I ask for a motion.
Okay.
Well, the reason we're continuing the meeting, though, is in case a quorum shows up, so we won't have to advertise the meeting. We don't have time to advertise the meeting.
All right.
And to avoid from holding an illegal meeting. That's the purpose of continuing the meeting. Am I not correct in that?
That's correct. And I know when this board has met jointly with the school board, the chairman of each board has always called its board to order. Right. And again, if there's going to be a vote, the city could call for a vote, but the county, may choose not to have a vote. So you're not really under the control or order of another board. You're just meeting at the joint location at a joint time.
I just want to be clear on that before we got down there.
Yeah, when we met with the school board before, it's kind of the way it's they call their meeting to order, we call our meeting to order. And they can vote on what they want to. We can. But like I say, I don't feel real comfortable about a lot of the issues we're talking about here, and I don't see
maybe you should use a different example.
Anything on there that I would be, unless they're handing out money for some of those things, I would be willing to vote on. But this is for information. I believe is what it's for. Okay,
Well,
no motion been made?
I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do want to make a few comments about the upcoming fiscal year budget, because as of now, it's not looking very good for FY10 and 11. Even though the department heads are currently working on their anticipated needs for the coming year, it's a long way from being a product that we can present to the county commissioners. But I feel that you should be aware, and I think you are. I mean, this is just saying something that I think needs to be said, and that it's going to be harder to balance next year's budget than it was the current year's budget. So Mr. Johnson, I would anticipate that all of the members of the board sitting here will be sitting on the board when the next budget has to be approved, and that's for FY10 and 11. Right now, early projections are that we're going to need an additional $5 million just to balance the budget if we hold expenditures at its current level. Even if there should be some improvement in those numbers before the proposed budget is submitted to the board, I think there's little doubt that one or more of the following actions are going to have to take place in the county to have a balanced budget effective July the 1st. Obviously, one way is to increase revenues. Well, county is limited to just a few ways that it can do that. One is through increasing the property tax, or increase in fees, or a combination of those. Sales tax is pretty much set by the state. There is that 0.25% that's still out there, but revenues, to balance the budget for next year, you're going to have to either increase revenues, or there's going to have to be some pretty drastic cuts made in all the services, including law enforcement, education, human services, as well as pay and benefits. I mean, we're talking about $5 million, and that's at the current level of expenditures, or a combination above. Until the budget planning meeting in February, the staff will continue to be diligent in trying to assess the situation and trying our best to offer a fiscal plan that will at least provide the essential services to the citizens. But I think you would also agree that no plan that we can offer will return us to the days of a few years ago. The recession, I think, was deeper than anyone ever anticipated that it would ever get, and it impacted Iredell County. We're still, sales taxes are way behind from what the collections were last year or the year before. Unemployment is still well above 12%, and even though we're seeing some new jobs created, we've still got a long way to go in that. And I'm not saying this to get any comments or direction from the board tonight, but I just wanted to make you aware that with the upcoming budget planning conference that you'll have at the end of February, how important that conference is going to be, because some priorities are going to have to be established at that time as to where the revenue is going to come from. And without your guidance and your leadership, I don't know how we're going to be able to put together a fiscal plan for FY10 and 11 that's going to meet your approval. So, basically, I just wanted to. I know you're thinking about it, but just to remind you to think seriously about the priorities for service delivery in the coming year.
Can I ask you just a couple of quick questions? You said on the expenditure side, if we kept the spending the same, is it the same plus? Don't we have to add another $600,000 into the pension fund, the state pension fund?
Well, that is
Flat
not included.
Plus that.
That's not included in the $5 million. I mean, that's just to stay at the current level.
Okay.
So we're looking at, as information you've received, we're having to look at that as well.
So it's really $5.6 million.
Yeah.
And then so it's just a revenue shortfall that we've had. Property taxes,
Property taxes have done they've met projection and maybe a little bit over. Really, it's sales taxes and as well as some of the fees that we charge for services.
What sort of, is it 4 million in sales tax and 1 million in fees, or is it 3 million sales taxes, 2 million in fees? What's the?
It's probably more, it's obviously more sales tax
Right.
than it is the fees, because we don't rely that heavily
Right.
on fees. And what we've been able to do, where we have had a shortage of fees, we have been able to cut back some expenditures in those areas.
Okay.
Basically, that's in those areas related to the building industry.
Right.
And we've actually been able to cut back some expenditures in those areas. So majority of it is in loss of revenue from sales taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had one question. We talked a few months ago about some, accruing liabilities that had to do with the fact that we weren't making capital purchases of things. And in February, are we going to have the answers to those questions? Okay.
I've got a folder that I keep
them
all
already.
of those things in, and as we build our agenda, we put all of that information together for it. So we will have that as well.
Do you have a feel for it tonight? Is what that number might be?
Not a feel for the number. I just know that between what we're required as far as human services specifically, and what as far as the percentages that we have to put in and so forth for some of the programs that we have to provide, I know that it's a pretty large number that we don't have a whole lot of control over. But what I plan to do is to show you, have a chart that shows you the expenditures that we're mandated by some statute or law to include in our budget for the next year, as well as those things that we have not included in the current year's budget, that either for FY11 or FY12 we're going to have to double up in those years to make up some of that. So I do plan to have that information for you. Hopefully we'll send the information out before the meeting in February, but it'd be something that you would have for discussion in February. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I've got. I do have an item in closed session. That's the personnel item that
I move we go into closed session to discuss economic development, GS 143 through 1811A4, and personnel issue of GS 143 1318 11A6. All in favor say aye. Aye. Back into open session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any motions to be made from the closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to call for a public hearing on February 2nd, 2010 at 7 o'clock regarding an economic development incentive of $184,054 over a 5-year period for an undisclosed company based on a $13 million investment in Iredell County.
Heard the motion? All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, like sign.
No.
Motion carries 4-1. If there's no other business, I move that we continue this meeting until 6 p.m. on January the 21st, 2010. All in favor say aye. 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 Is there a motion?
At the Charles Mack Center in Mooresville.
Huh? At where? Charles Mack Center? At the Charles Mack Center in Mooresville. Okay.